Each year, we spend $1,340 billion on arms, while famine destroys the life of more than 1 billion people. That's a fact Jacques Diouf of the United Nations wants the people to think about and change. He's asking for $44 billion to free the world from hunger. The French government and the French Football Federation are getting involved. Before a match with Austria, the FFF presented the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization with a cheque for €10,000. Mr. Diouf met with Euronews in Paris.
Monsieur Jacques Diouf, merci d'être avec nous.
Mr. Jacques Diouf, thank you for joining us.
Les données indiquent que notre planète
Research shows that our planet is able to feed 6 billion humans. So why is there hunger in the world?
Il y a la faim dans le monde.
There's hunger in the world because we don't invest enough in agriculture in poor countries. In poor countries, there are now sadly 1 billion people starving.
These poor countries are mostly in Africa, the most fertile continent in the world.
Vous avez raison de dire que les ressources existent.
Well, you're right to say that the resources are there. First, there's water. Africa uses just 4% of its water reserves. Today, only 7% of arable land is irrigated, which means 93% of farmland on this continent depends on rain. If it doesn't rain, if it rains too much or too late, there isn't a good yield.
It's
predicted that by 2050 we will be 9 billion on the Earth, instead of the 6 billion we are now, which will intensify famine. How can we solve this? With, for example, genetically modified crops which need less water?
Commençons d'abord par utiliser l'eau que nous avons.
Well, let's begin with using the water that we have and investing in enabling farmers to have metal silos and storage areas. Because in some farming, it's paradoxical. During the production process, 40 to 60% is lost because of a lack of means to conserve the produce. Investment is also needed in rural roads. How can we bring the modern world in? Seed fertilizer, livestock feed, vaccines, when there aren't the roads? How can farming produce get to markets if there aren't roads? Those are the most important questions before debating GM foods.
Who should be investing in this infrastructure?
Firstly, the responsibility lies with the people and their governments. So that's a question of resource allocations of the national budget of each country which has a food deficit. But it's also the responsibility of the developed countries. Development aid is unfortunately allocated to things other than agriculture.
With the need for water and with climate change forecast to bring drought, will Europe and the Western world be facing a mass arrival of starving immigrants?
Mais c'est certain que lorsqu'on ne trouve pas chez soi.
Well, it's certain that when there aren't the minimal conditions to survive at home, the human being's essentials, beyond breathing and drinking, that's eating. Naturally, these people will come to Europe.
Naturellement, ces populations vont venir en Europe. Vous savez très bien que
you know very well that during the potato crisis, the Irish fled to the US. During the famine in Italy, Italians rushed to Argentina and to other parts of Europe and elsewhere.
At the moment, people are talking about climate change. What do we need to get people talking as much about hunger?
Nous comptons sur les médias. C'est une question d'abord de prise de conscience.
We're counting on the media. First of all, it's a question of public awareness, not the lack of resources. In OECD countries, they spend $365 billion a year supporting agriculture, in countries where farming is less than 2 to 4% of the population.
Dans des pays où la population agricole représente entre 2 et 4%. Alors que dans les pays du tiers-monde, la population
in the third world, the rural population is between 60 and 80%. So we need how much to help the development? $44 billion a year. We spend $1,340 billion buying weapons. We can't spend $44 billion on life.
On ne peut pas dépenser 44 milliards pour la vie. Voilà le problème.
The problem is ethics, morals, politics. We're hoping there will be a great realization.
Nous espérons qu'il y a maintenant une plus grande prise de conscience, hélas.
Sadly, because there are clashes in 22 countries and deaths, we know that the food problem is a question of solidarity between humans, which is also a problem for peace and world security.
Un problème de paix et de sécurité dans le monde.
You've just received a cheque from the French Football Federation for €10,000. Is it a drop in the ocean of need?
Petite goutte d'eau dans un grand océan de besoin.
C'est une petite goutte d'eau financière, c'est une grosse.
It is a drop financially, but it's a great step in consciousness.
Du montant, ce qui est important, c'est que
this amount is important because it is the sports world showing they're interested in world hunger. They're using the importance of sport, which is watched by the entire world, to make people aware of the fact that you can't be sporty when you're hungry.
Sensibiliser sur le fait qu'on ne peut pas être sportif si on a faim.
Merci beaucoup.
Je vous remercie.